Welcome to Simply Sleepy. This is your time to slow down, to let go of the day, and to prepare your body and mind for rest. Before we begin tonight's story, I invite you to take a slow, gentle breath in through your nose, and then release it softly through your mouth. As you breathe, let your shoulders fall. Loosen your jaw and notice the way the bed beneath you supports your weight. You don't need to hold anything up. You don't need to keep anything tight. With each breath, allow yourself to settle fully into comfort. Tonight, I'll share with you a true story, one of friendship, loyalty, and the bittersweet beauty of letting go. It's a story of Christian the lion. In the late 1960s, in the vibrant heart of London, two young Australians named John Rendall and Anthony Bourke were exploring their new city, still adjusting to the bustling rhythm of life, in a place that felt worlds away from the coasts and open spaces they had known back home. London at that time was alive with energy and change. The streets echoed with music from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. The air carried the smell of fresh bread from corner bakeries. And in Chelsea and along King's Road, the counterculture scene was in full bloom. Fashion, art, and ideas all colliding in bold new ways. It was into this electric atmosphere that John and Ace wandered one afternoon into the famous Harrods department store, a place that was as much a spectacle as it was a marketplace. Harrods in those days was not just a shop, it was a symbol of grandeur, with polished floors, ornate ceilings, and endless displays that tempted the imagination. But tucked within its luxurious halls was something both curious and controversial, an exotic pet section. It was an era before strict wildlife laws, when the keeping of unusual animals was not yet recognized as cruel or impractical. Rows of cages held creatures that looked startlingly out of place in the middle of London. Birds from the tropics, monkeys with nervous eyes, and in one small enclosure, something that made John and Ace stop in their tracks. Inside that cage was a lion cub. He was small enough to look vulnerable, yet majestic enough to command awe. His fur shone a soft, golden colour, catching the artificial light above him, and his eyes, wide, searching, impossibly alive, seemed to pierce through the noise and bustle of the store. They weren't the eyes of a creature meant for confinement. They carried a depth, a quiet intelligence, and a longing that made the two men feel an immediate ache in their chests. The cub tilted his head with curiosity, pressing his nose against the bars, as if reaching for something beyond them. There was an innocence about him, but also an unmistakable sense that he didn't belong there. For John and Ace, who had grown up surrounded by the openness of Australia, the sight was almost unbearable. Here was a symbol of wild freedom, trapped in a cage, offered up for purchase, like an ornament. They felt an instant connection, something beyond reason, as though fate itself had placed that lion cub before them. They couldn't walk away. They couldn't imagine leaving him to a future of captivity, or worse, to an uncertain fate in the hands of someone who might not understand what such a creature truly needed. The decision was not light, but it was immediate. With determination, they arranged to buy the cub. They named him Christian. From the moment they brought him home, Christian's life transformed. No longer confined to a cage beneath harsh store lights, he stepped into the strange but warm world of domestic London living. John and Ace lived above a furniture shop on King's Road, a street famous at the time for its lively bohemian culture. Musicians, artists, and free thinkers gathered there, and the shop below became both a home and a stage for the unusual new resident who would soon capture the neighborhood's imagination. Christian learned the rhythms of city life in ways that were both astonishing and endearing. He would stretch his growing body across thick carpets, bat at dangling objects with oversized paws, and curiously inspect the furniture displays in the shop below. To visitors, it was surreal. One moment they were browsing chairs and tables, the next they were met by the golden gaze of a lion padding softly across the floor. Yet Christian was no threat. He was affectionate, playful, and deeply bonded to the two men who had saved him. He grew to trust them completely, greeting them with nuzzles and gentle headbutts, his purr-like rumble filling the room as they scratched behind his ears. What struck people most was his gentleness. Despite being a lion, there was no malice in his nature. Children who visited the shop pressed their hands to the glass, staring in awe, and Christian would peer back at them with a look that seemed more curious than predatory. Passers-by sometimes stopped in disbelief at the sight, wondering aloud if what they saw was real. A lion in a London furniture shop. It sounded like something out of a dream. But for John and Ace, Christian was not a curiosity. He was family. Their bond was not one of ownership, but of companionship. They treated him with respect, never harshly, always mindful that though he was tame in demeanor, he was still a lion. They fed him carefully, played with him patiently, and gave him affection freely. In return, Christian grew into a creature who was both regal and tender, embodying the wildness of his species, yet softened by the love of those who raised him. But time, as it always does, moved forward. Christian's body lengthened, his paws grew heavier, and his playful leaps carried more force than before. Slowly, John and Ace began to realize the truth they had tried to keep at bay. A lion could not remain in London forever. The walls of their flat, no matter how comfortable, were not the savannas he was meant to roam. The city streets, with their noise and narrow spaces, were no place for a growing lion whose spirit called for the wild. Keeping him in that life was not fair, to him, to them, or to the people around them. The weight of this realization pressed heavily on their hearts. They loved Christian as one loves family, with a devotion that defies explanation. But love, true love, is not about possession. It is about recognizing when letting go is the greatest act of care. And so, with aching hearts, they began to search for a way to give him the life he deserved. Through a fortunate connection, they were introduced to George Adamson, a legendary conservationist in Kenya, who, alongside his wife Joy, had dedicated his life to reintroducing lions to the wild. George was known for his patience, his deep understanding of animals, and his commitment to helping them find freedom. When John and Ace explained Christian's story, George agreed to help. Plans were set in motion for the young lion to travel to Africa. It was a decision that broke their hearts, but also gave them hope. They had raised Christian with every ounce of care they could, and now they had to trust that the wild, a place they could not follow, would give him what he truly needed. Christian's release would not be instant nor easy. He would need time to adjust, to learn instincts that captivity had dulled, to rediscover what it meant to be a lion. George Adamson would guide him through that transition, teaching him to hunt, to roam, and to reclaim the freedom that had always been his birthright. And so, with tears and with love, John and Ace prepared to say goodbye. Slowly, Christian found his place in the wilderness, learning to rely on instincts that had always been inside him. A year passed. John and Ace, still missing him deeply, decided to visit Kenya to see how he had adjusted. They were told it was unlikely that Christian would even remember them. After all, he was now living as a wild lion, integrated into his pride. But the men travelled anyway, carrying a mix of hope and doubt. What happened when they arrived became one of the most moving animal stories of all time, As they stood in the open savannah, Christian appeared in the distance. He was larger now, more powerful, his golden mane full and wild. For a moment he watched them. Then recognition sparked in his eyes. He began to move, first a walk, then a run, and finally he bounded toward them. Instead of aggression, he leapt into their arms like the playful cub they had raised. He pressed his massive body against them, licking their faces, hugging them with his great paws, nuzzling them as though no time had passed. The reunion was overwhelming. Witnesses described it as pure love, the kind that doesn't fade with distance or time. Christian remembered them, not just faintly, but fully, as though the bond they had shared was carved into his heart. He welcomed them with joy, and, for a few precious moments, they were reunited, man and lion, family once more. But after the tears and embraces, John and Ace knew. They knew they couldn't stay, and they couldn't bring him back with them. Christian was no longer theirs to keep. He belonged to the wild now. Their farewell this time was final. Christian lived out his life in Africa, free as he was always meant to be. And though John and Ace never saw him again, their story remains one of the most beautiful examples of the deep, mysterious bond that can exist between humans and animals. It is sad, yes, because all goodbyes carry sadness, but it is also filled with joy, because the love they shared gave Christian the chance to live the life he deserved. And so tonight, as you drift into sleep, perhaps you can carry a little of Christian's story with you, the warmth of loyalty, the sweetness of reunion, and the peace of letting go with love. Now, take another slow, deep breath. Feel the air fill your lungs and release it gently. Allow your body to soften, your chest, your shoulders, your arms heavy against the bed. Let your legs sink deeper, your toes unclench, your eyes close softly. You are safe. You are warm. You are ready to rest. Good night.